Hey guys, it's Robin, and you're listening to the Live Life Balance podcast. My heart is full knowing that you're here today, prioritizing you and your wellness. This podcast is for women looking for an authentic, supportive community to learn about wellness from all angles and who want to just feel their best. I'll be your guide, pointing you to ideas and tools that you can experiment with to find what works for you, because we all bring different experiences and knowledge to the table. No pun intended. Health is not a one-size-fits-all. By feeling our best, we're able to show up in our purpose, and that allows us to live the most joyful life, even in the most challenging times. Together, we're going to grow by learning to align ourselves and taking some simple, actionable steps that feel right for you. We're going to talk about self-care. We'll talk about nutrition, daily toxins. We'll talk food swaps. We'll definitely be talking about mindset and reframing our thoughts because it's so important. I hope that you leave today feeling more empowered and at ease. And I hope that you can take one or two small steps to be able to create the you that you want to be. Are you ready for all the possibilities? If you said yes, say, I am ready. Now let's get into it. Hi, welcome back to the Live Life Balance podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I have a special guest with me, Tonia. She is currently an NDTR, and she also has been trained with the CDC to be certified in diabetes prevention. She's worked in a variety of clinical situations. She's been in the hospital for the past 22 years doing some nutrition education for inpatient and community classes. She's well-versed in all kinds of different health things. She also went back to school to become a health coach, and she just sat for her national board test. So she will soon have that to add to her tool belt as well. So welcome, Tonia. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you, Robin?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and start to get to know you. And I just think what you have to offer is a lot. And so I just wanted to have a conversation so that you can talk about some of your knowledge that you have, because I think a lot of people could benefit from it that listen to this podcast. So if you want to just start by kind of introducing yourself, telling us kind of how you got where you are today, because your journey seems pretty cool. So
I come from an Italian background. My family's 100% Italian. Come from big meals, lots of food, family, love. I grew up with my mom doing all home cooked meals, canning, gardening, lots of baked goods. So from my early childhood into my teen life, I tended to be a bit overweight just through lots of sweets and desserts. And, it was good, healthy food, but we also focused a lot on just food in general. So, I hit a certain point in my life where I didn't feel good about myself. I felt overweight. I felt that I needed to make some changes. So I really geared towards learning a little bit more about nutrition. What am I eating? What is that doing? Eating sweets all day, how is that affecting my life? So I went into school for nutrition. And when I got out of school, I started out just as a nutrition counselor, which is kind of funny. I started out at Nutrisystem, which was, 34 years I've been in the industry, and just obviously Nutrisystem is not the way to go these days, but I learned a lot through dealing with people, their eating habits, learning that, eating is much more, or weight management is much more than just what we eat, but there's so many issues around, our feelings, our environment, our social aspect. And from there, I moved on to working at Hazelton. and I was there for quite a while. I worked with a lot of eating disorders, a lot of times with addiction. There's cross addiction. So dealing with people that when they weren't using substance abuse were leaning towards binging on sugar, overeating in general, just to, get that feeling of satisfaction. So, a lot of binge eating, a lot of eating disorders. When you take away the substance abuse, there's a whole lot of other things that you have to deal with. So when you're shoving down your feelings or you're trying to get relief from drugs, when that's taken away, there's a lot of emotions that you have to deal with. So I did a lot of one-on-one nutrition counseling when I was there. I did a lot of large speaking groups and then small individual eating disorder groups. And I learned a lot about that environment, and that helped me grow quite a bit. From there, I moved on to hospital, and I've been in the hospital community doing community classes, like you said, inpatient education, and just dealing with a lot of chronic disease in general. Being in that environment, again, it's a lot of just education, and you don't feel like you have a huge impact on people. You're hoping that you do, but in reality, it all comes back to when you're overeating or you're abusing things like food, or substance abuse like smoking or alcohol. There's a reason why we're dealing with those types of issues. And just nutrition education in general isn't enough to get to what's the underlying root cause of these things. So my children got older. My last one's in college. I went back to integrative nutrition and holistic medicine classes. I finished that degree, and then over the last year, I've worked on sitting for the board certification in hopes that I can really help people in a greater way, where I can deal with not only just their food issues, but mind, body, spiritual. What are the things that are missing in their lives, or things that are going to make them happier and healthier? So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
We all start in one place, right? And I say journey because we go through so many transitions as we're learning. And so one of the things that we speak to people about is, where you start and where you end. In the middle, there's ups and downs, and there's curves, and there's pits, and there's, all the things, because that is truly what life is. And so I love your story with, starting in one field, like you said, Nutrisystem, and maybe that isn't like, the quote unquote way to go, but you still learned a lot through that. You still learned and picked up the things you needed for yourself to understand what were important things and what weren't. And so I think, anybody listening to this is, if you've experienced any kind of program, whether you're doing it today or not, hopefully you've taken away little bits and pieces that work for you. There are a lot of, things out there that might not help you to live the most balanced lifestyle, but something is something. And so get something from whatever it is that you're actually doing positively, and then kind of move to the next thing. And as you grow and learn, then you grow into the next thing. And that kind of sounds what your journey's been about. I find it really fascinating that you've been working with people in the hospital setting, and you've been doing a lot of education, but you don't feel like it's enough, because you hope, right? You hope that what you're teaching them is something that resonates with them and that you take it away. But for a lot of people that are in a chronic state, a health condition, right? They have something chronically wrong with them. Not only do they need the education portion of it, but they also just need support, because when you're low and you're not feeling well, you could be taught something all day long, but if you don't have the momentum, the energy, the support, the community to implement, because it's not just about education, it's about implementation. And so as health coaches, that is what we do, right? We work with the people not only on, the educational side of things, but how can they implement it best and be their guide to allow them to learn that they have the power to make those changes. So I'm very curious, like when you are working with the people in the hospital setting, because I'm sure it's very hard for you to kind of hold back that I want to support you kind of, and I'm sure you do, slip it in wherever you can, but what do you think is like a common thing that if to that program you could add one or two things to make that it more effective? What do you think those things would be for the people that might have chronic diabetes or might have cardiac issues or something? What is your
Yes.
what is your perspective on that?
Since I've gone through the training, I have changed the way I approach people, in the hospital and in class settings, because I've realized that, first of all, people just want to be heard. They want to be heard what I'm feeling, what I'm doing, why this is difficult. And they don't always get that from the doctors. You get a slap on diagnosis, you need to go home and eat healthier, but that leaves a vast amount of information that the patient has no idea what to do with. So, listening to what they're saying, listening to what they're struggling with, what are they dealing with in general, and everybody that has a chronic disease, which is 60% of Americans right now, at least have one chronic disease. The fact is that a lot of them don't even know how to go about making a simple change. So really going through what their day looks like, what their life looks like, what's out of balance. We can talk about food, but what other things are you struggling with? So trying to, really implement, what are some lifestyle changes that you can start to implement in your life besides just eating healthier? How can we make this go together so that you can start moving forward in small, simple steps that feel sustainable for you? So trying to look at the bigger picture versus just, you need to eat more fruits and vegetables, because we say that all day long, but everybody is in a different situation, whether it be, how much money they have, what kind of living conditions they have, how bad is their disease, how much is their medication. So we can't just take a diet and give it to someone. Each person is going to need an individual approach, and we need to look at them as a whole and help them figure out small steps to move forward. So really just listening to the individual and seeing what's best for them and help them decide what small changes they can make. So in regards to that, someone that's just diagnosed with even pre-diabetes, I've seen a couple of people today. Tell me what's going on in your life. How did you get to this point? What things are not working for you? So brainstorming, problem solving with each person to kind of see what they need from me and how I can support them.
That's amazing. And I'm just thinking, what if we had more, not just people like you in that kind of a setting, but what if we had more centers that were really center focused on the individual rather than just the disease? Because you are so correct in saying, somebody that comes in with pre-diabetes, a lot of times I hear people say, well, it's just pre, and they said, I don't really need to do anything yet because it's not diabetes. And it's like, well, yes, might be true, but if you continue to live the same lifestyle you're living right now, you're heading in that direction. So what is it that needs to happen now to prevent that, right? But people don't see that because their doctors give them the okay. Well, you're still okay. You're not so bad. It's like talking to somebody, and then when they are diagnosed with something, even in the pre-stages or perhaps before the pre-stages, it's like, what is your lifestyle? What are you doing on a daily basis? And trying to reverse or balance out some of those routines and habits that people have to prevent. And I just think we need such a push in prevention, which includes education, but prevention before we get to the actual disease. So I saw one of the things that you do is, you talk and educate people like with reducing sugar, and that's a big one. Sugar is addictive. It's something that is in, if you're a processed eating kind of person, it is in every single thing that you eat. And I always find it to be fascinating when we actually see, like, I think it's a gram is like 4 teaspoons or something. There's like a method. I think it's 4 grams is 4 teaspoons, something like that. So when you're looking at a product and you see that it has, 24 grams of sugar, that doesn't it computes it's a lot, right? But it doesn't really give you the visual. But when you see the visual of actually how many teaspoons of
Yeah.
sugar that
Yeah.
is, that's the eye opener. And that's what needs to be, the education portion's got to be visual too, because grams and things, unless you're in that world and understand it, it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll do 22 grams of sugar instead, and it's like, should your daily allowance be? People are not educated on that. And I just was talking with someone recently about like education, the education system in general. And it's like, we're failing our children and we're failing our teens and adults because we have nothing on health and wellness really until you decide maybe that's what you want your major to be when you go to college. Just like
Right.
it's like nobody really, and I'm not against history and I'm not against math and I'm not against any of those subjects, but why can't we find a space to fit health and wellness and mindset and all of that into our children's day to day so that they're brought up with those things as fundamentals and not just when we get to the sick point. So the question I really wanted to ask you in the roundabout way was, so when you're helping somebody to reduce their sugar intake, what are some of the educational pieces that you provide to help them to understand the why and the how?
Well, when it comes to sugar, it's in everything, and we just call, carbohydrates are the bad guy right now. And, you know, in our life, we need carbohydrates to get energy. It supports our brain, it supports our body. If we exercise, it supports our muscles. So it isn't just good and bad, but with all of the products that are out there right now, it's so misleading to the consumer. And you're right about the grams. Who knows what that means? There's high fructose corn syrup in all of our products. So I think an explanation of what it really means as a carbohydrate. What are you eating? How is it affecting your body when you eat an apple versus, a candy bar versus a piece of white bread? I think it's important to explain how this functions in your body, what it does to your body. Something like an apple, which has fiber and antioxidants and supports nutrients and helps our body be healthy, versus eating, Skittles and white bread and sodas, which cause depression, they cause inflammation, they increase our blood sugar and decrease it very quickly. And eating too many of the wrong types of sugars are increase our risk for chronic disease substantially. So it starts with them understanding what it means when you put these foods in your body. Because, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you had mentioned just a second ago the high fructose corn syrup. And I've talked about this before, but I think it's so funny, not funny, but my first real awakening was with that. And so I had gone to, we had moved to Michigan and I joined a gym and they were like, oh, if you take two free health classes, you get a free spa treatment. So I was like, oh, sign me up. Right. So one was nutrition and one was something else. And my life was forever changed sitting in that nutrition class, because it was like, this is what high fructose corn syrup does to your body. This is what, this does to your body. What hydrogenated oils, so those two things are like what stuck in my mind. And I went right home and I went to the pantry, and we had a almost 1-year-old at the time. And I like started to look and I was like, oh my gosh, like everything in here has that. And I just threw it all out. I was just like, we have a 1-year-old. I mean, whatever, we've damaged ourselves over the years and it'll take us, but we've got to really like get this right, And so we were left with like really little. And I happened to be involved in a mom's club, and they all chopped their vegetables and they did all the things. And it's just not how I grew up, because I also grew up in a household that was Italian and Jewish. And so it's just a food galore all the time. And so just not something that we really talked about. The only time that it was ever talked about is if you were overweight and needed to lose weight. It was like one of those, it was never about health and wellness and education that way. So, but that education portion that I received that day really changed me and the trajectory of my life. And so I want you to know what you are doing, even if you feel like not everybody takes away things, you're reaching people. And when you hear something over and over and over again, it's that final time you hear it that the light bulb goes off, And so just know what you're doing is amazing, because these people, if they're learning why carbs are needed, and not to be, because you're right, everybody, you know, has their own little things about carbs and all the diets out there, and I can't have any. And it's like, no, but you need, there's a difference between healthy carbs and unhealthy carbs. And so that's again another education piece that needs to get out there, that people understand, not to be afraid of whole nutrient dense food, and balancing it out with, you know, food combining and proper, you know, things like that. So that education that you give to people is absolutely amazing. How do you talk about like fiber and gut health? What is something that you educate?
Well, I think that we talk about fiber a lot, but what fiber does for our body is amazing. I mean, the foods that are high in fiber contain so many important nutrients for our body. So when we're eating a high fiber diet, you know, the recommended is 25 to 38 grams a day, depending on your age and your size. But when you eat high fiber foods, it does a host of things, from either soluble, which forms a gel in your gut, which can help pull out fat and cholesterol, which is good for us. There's the insoluble, which stays intact in our gut. And, you know, those types of things can help lower blood sugar, reduce our risk for cancers, reduce our risk for heart disease, reduce our risk for diabetes. So there's not enough emphasis on fiber. And when we're eating more fiber, we're eating less of the bad things. So trying to get in more fruits and vegetables, trying to get at least half or more of your daily intake from whole grains like oatmeal, whole wheat bread, brown rice, popcorn, really looking at the rainbow. So fiber is important in preventing chronic diseases, reducing your risk of colon cancer, helping our body stay healthy. And when we're eating fiber, it helps us have healthy gut bacteria, which helps us fight off disease. So it's a really important part of our diet. And, you know, just educating people on what kinds of fiber there is, where we get it from, that all important. One is more important than the other. We need a variety of fibers. And so when we increase or crowd out the bad foods and work on foods that we can add to our diet, hopefully that increases or includes more fiber. So I do like to talk about fiber and how it's important, and just what fiber can do for our body in general.
Yeah. And, you know, talking about the insoluble and soluble, it's not something that I think, unless you live in this world, it's not something that's really put out there a lot for the normal person, not normal, but the average person to know. And so those are really important things to educate people about, because it really gives them an understanding about, again, what the actual food does internally inside the body. And the more the more you understand how food fuels you, I think the better it is when you're making food choices, you know. And the thing is, with food, that I have come to realize is, what is good for one person could be poison for another person. And so, you know, when we talk about like good and bad, there are obviously a general handful of things that we know are not healthy, which is candy, most candy, seed oils, you know, there's a general handful of things. But then you have things that might not be healthy for one person, like dairy. Some people can handle dairy, some people can't handle dairy. Some people can handle gluten, some people cannot handle gluten. And it's really learning to tune into yourself and noticing how you feel when you eat these foods. The problem that I've seen over the course of the last several years is that with some people, they don't even know that it's affecting them, because they've been affected for so long.
Yeah.
They feel it's normal. They feel like, well, I just feel like this every day, and it's okay. I mean, I'm okay. I'm not on any medication. I'm not in the hospital. I'm still able to kind of do my daily life. And what they don't realize is they're still being affected. It just hasn't come to that point yet, you know? And so learning, again, what your triggers are, you know, is super important, so that you can, eliminate the triggery food and then add in other foods, again, to create more nutrient dense opportunities for your body to take in. So yes, I love this. I mean, I love what you do. It's so important. And I think that what coaching does is it also helps to connect to people, because you're right. You know, everybody's situation is different. And if someone is struggling with something off the plate, right? Those primary foods that are not on the plate. We really have to address those things because that really feeds into choices that you make, how you feel mentally and physically, and all the things. And all those things play into, again, what choices you do make. Because when you're feeling good and you're feeling energized, there is a statistics, and I don't remember exactly the percentage, but you're less likely to choose poor choices because you feel better. And then when you're down in the slumps and you're not really on your A game, you are more likely to pick foods that are comforting, that are usually more or less, nutrient dense and kind of, what I call garbagey food,
Yeah.
that don't
Mm-hmm.
really fuel you. So I
Yeah.
think one of the other things that I love to talk about is nutritional label reading.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just curious because it used to be that the big focus was always on the top part of the label, right? Where you've got your calories and your fat and your fiber and your this and your sugar. And again, I think glance at it. I don't think totally ignore it, but I always think what's even more important than that nutritional at the top is what's in it, the actual ingredients. And so do you educate people on ingredient reading, and what is your take on that?
So I think it's important that you need to learn how to read labels, because if you have some goals for yourself and you don't know what you're buying at the store, you can't rely on low sodium, or you can't rely on heart healthy or all natural or organic. Those really mean nothing. You have to get to the meat of it and look at what that label says. You want to look at, how many servings are in that package, first of all. Are you taking a portion or not a portion? Where's that fat coming from? We really need to be aware of those partially hydrogenated fats. And if that's in the label, throw the product away. Don't even buy it. There's a limit on partially hydrogenated fats, but any partially hydrogenated fat is a bad choice. So look for ones without that. The first 4 or 5 ingredients is what's most important, or that's going to be the primary source of what you're eating. But the fact is that if there's a long label and it's words that you can't pronounce, it's not a product you want anyways. Look for foods that you understand what they mean. Where is this coming from? Does it have olive oil? Is it a natural source of sodium? Where's the protein coming from? So I think it's important to know what the ingredients mean, what you're actually eating. And if it's a product that has a lot of unknown words underneath it, then it's probably not a good choice. So looking for whole foods, obviously shopping around the perimeter of the store and trying to stay away from the middle of the store. There's some good choices in there, obviously, but as we know, the grocery stores are filled with unhealthy choices. And so if you're going to go in those aisles, you need to learn how to read the label. Where's the food coming from? What's the portion size? What am I getting out of it that's actually good for me? Is this something I want to feed my family and myself?
Yeah, those are all great tips. The one sneaky thing that just came to my mind that I have seen myself is the sugar labels, because they did break it down into sugar and then added sugar. But when you were talking about, the ingredient reading list and the first 5 being like the most, I do totally agree with that. But I think what was happening is people are looking at the first and 5 and they're not really seeing sugar. And so they're like, oh, well, it's not mainly sugar, right? I mean, but what I have discovered is that they break down the rest of the list with these words that are actually sugar. And so there might not just say one type of sugar, it could be 6 different types of sugar within, and they can do that to trick you. They do it because then they don't have to list it as it's probably should be the first ingredient really, but instead it's just kind of broken down within. And so when she was talking about not buying things with words that are not able to pronounce, if you see those words, look them up and see what they actually are, because again, I think that's educational for yourself. Really, it's an investigation. And one time I remember we went to a restaurant and, I think we got soup or something and they came with those crackers. And so my sister and I, it was just us, and we were looking at the ingredients and we were like, what is that? And it was like something along the lines of like THTB or something like that. It was like a 4-letter H word. And we were like, oh, we don't know what that is. And so we looked it up, and it is a preservative that helps them keep that product on the shelf for 20 plus years. And I was like, are you kidding me? This was probably like 15 years ago. I was like, that is so disgusting, right? And that's in a lot of things. So I don't know the exact acronym. I'll put it in the show notes for anybody that's interested, but it's HTQB or something like that. So if you see that on a label and you don't want to look it up, just know that that's something that allows a product to sit on the shelf for 20 plus years. So you could be eating crackers that are 20 plus years old. And to me, that's not food. I don't know what that is. That's weird. Um,
Yeah. Yep.
so
That's why going through the aisles with too many ingredients on the label, anything in the aisle is going to need a preservative in there to stay for a long time. So know what's in your food before you buy it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the easiest advice to give anybody is learn, what's actually in and not being greenwashed by whatever's on the front of the package, because 90% of the time that's a marketing gimmick to get you to purchase it. And they do a good job because lots of people do, right? Okay, so in, kind of talking forward, one of the things that people often say is, without salt there is no taste.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the last probably 20, 30 years, people have forgotten about some things that live in your cupboard or that you can get fresh that actually, can create taste. So you want to talk a little bit about that education that you provide?
Yeah, I think that salt, because we eat so many processed foods, we get a taste for salt. Just like sugar's addictive, salt is highly addictive. And we have a high tolerance for salt. So when we eat foods that are not highly salted, they do taste different. And we're not used to it and we don't like it. But going back to the basics and taking food as a whole and learning to use spices. I have an herb garden in the back of my yard. It's amazing when you're growing tarragon or fennel or basil and you're adding that to fresh ingredients or using good spices in your cupboard. Learning how to re-season your food without using the salt shaker all the time is really important. So, I like to give handouts on things with different kinds of proteins and seasonings that go best with it, or if we're making soups or stews, what are some great herbs or seasonings that you can add to it that are natural. And herbs and spices actually have a lot of antioxidants, so they do promote decreased inflammation and they increase the flavor in your food. So once you stop salting everything and decrease your processed foods and you start using natural flavorings, your taste buds are going to change. Once you stop eating all that sugar and cut that out, fruit is going to become sweet again. So it's retraining your taste buds to go back to what we know we should be eating and what's good for us. So it's more a matter of trying to go into it with a different mindset. It doesn't have to be highly salted to taste good. We just have to relearn how to make our food. So, looking up recipes, I've got books on Mediterranean diet and just looking up things to season without salt. And the more you do that, the more you become more comfortable with it. And you learn to enjoy foods without all that salt again. So it's retraining our taste buds, realizing that we have geared our lifestyle and our food choices towards unhealthy things, and our health and our bodies are paying for it. So really looking at how we can change the way that we do things to live a healthier life.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. First of all, if you're not a gardener or if you don't have a particularly really green type of thumb,
Mm-hmm.
that is me, and I can still grow herbs. So there's something about herbs that, they allow you not to have the greenest thumb and still be able to produce. And it is so amazing when it is fresh, and you can buy it at the grocery store fresh also if you're not a gardener type person. But also, there are some spices that are, dried that you can also use. And yeah, experimenting with those. And everybody, one of the things, that you just said about like retraining your taste buds. It's so true that if we just give ourselves some time and patience, that you definitely can. And fruit is very, very sweet. And if you don't think it's sweet, then you really need to kind of re-examine what you eat on a daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
and see where, maybe you could go a couple of days without anything processed so that you can start to see what it is to have something that's naturally sweet. The spice thing. When I first started cooking, I used spices a little bit just because of being Italian, we, use parsley and like this. But since having my own family and, really healing some of us through certain different things that we have had going on, spices really came in handy, and it really does a tremendous amount of flavoring, like you said, without the salt. And when
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about salt, we're talking about like the table salt. There
Mm-hmm.
are salts like Celtic sea salt and pink Himalayan salt that are different. So again, not all salt is created the same, and same with sugar. Not all sugar, carbs, not all, so everything isn't just a one way or the other. And so you really have to, again, start delving in and diving in to learn. A little bit of that salt isn't the same as a little bit of white refined table sugar. And so learning that, again, you don't want to go crazy and season everything to the hill with salt, but those are things in a recipe, if you need to add a little bit to a recipe, that, are very good. Also, if you are dehydrated, Celtic salt helps to help you recover from dehydration faster, without spiking your salt
Blood
intake
pressure.
level. Yes, blood pressure. Thank you. Thank you.
The other thing to remember is just going back to spices, that in the summer month, there's a lot of farmers markets and so on. And if you do like fresh spices, there's nothing wrong with buying extra and freezing them, so that
Good
when you make
idea.
sauce, in the winter, or you want some other spices, and they freeze well. It's easy to do, and then it's a lot cheaper to do at this time of year. And talking about sugar, using pure maple syrup or great honey as a substitute once in a while, because it has some nutritional value compared to just plain old sugar, and it also has some natural capabilities and health compounds to it that are also good for us. So trying some other types of sweeteners, some other ways to season your foods, and again, going to the farmers market and talking to the people that grow food there, because they can give you a lot of great tips, a lot of great ideas. And if you don't know how to freeze things, either Google it or talk to people that they do that for a living.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I was just thinking that's another thing that should be incorporated into the school system, is that everybody at some point in their middle school, high school is required to go to farmers markets and to find out how our food is grown. And I think when you understand that, it really does help you see things differently. And our
Yes.
poor quality in soil and the whole like regenerative soil thing that's coming up. And so I think, again,
Yes.
it's just about talking and talking your story and telling people and educating. And the freezing is a great idea. I'm not a huge freezer, and I don't know why. I mean, because it is so simple, but I'm going to actually start doing that, because I love fresh herbs and stuff like that, and basil and things like that. I think that was better
And,
than the dried.
and when you freeze them, they don't take up much space. And, when you go to use them in the winter, they are going to still have more flavor than what your dried ones would be. In talking about the soil, really look at supporting your community by going to your local farmers. Those people are growing things the right way, and there's less and less of those people that are supported these days. So there's less and less small farms around to help our community stay healthy. So when you buy from the farmers markets, you buy from a farmer, you're supporting sustainable produce, you're supporting healthier products that we're eating. And the more of those that stay around, the healthier our communities are.
Yeah, and a lot of communities have CSAs, which are, I
Oh,
forget what that actually stands for, but we have a couple local, and my sister and I did it for a long time. I don't know why we stopped, but I'll never forget when we split a shipment or whatever. So I brought him to her office, and my brother happened to be there, and so he had made some hummus, so he was eating the celery with it, and he was like, this is the best celery I've ever had. I mean, he's like, this is so weird. It doesn't taste like, and I was like, yeah, because it hasn't traveled 30,000 miles to get to your store, and it's not been washed, or it's coming from the ground and you're getting it. It's also been grown properly. It doesn't have a bunch of pesticides and herbicides. And so, I love when you get that newbie who gets something for the first time, and you bite into an apple. An apple at the store is very different than an apple from a farmer.
And I belong to a CSA, and I support them wholly. I also get all my greens and microgreens delivered to my house. And you know what? With the quality of the produce in the store right now after COVID, it's so worth it.
Mm.
You feel amazing when you eat like that, and the food tastes completely different. You are right. It's amazing the flavor you get from a farm grown produce or fruit than what you get from the store. You don't even realize there's such a substantial difference until you actually eat those products.
I am like super interested in microgreens, and I love sprouts, and I love all of that
Oh,
stuff. So what microgreens are your favorite?
oh my gosh. I get them delivered every couple weeks, and they have such a great variety. They have broccoli greens, radish greens, sunflower
Mm.
green. Oh my gosh, dandelion greens. They probably have 10 different kinds, and I get 4 each time they're delivered. And he has multiple different lettuce. They come in right off the field, and we eat our way through them every day, until they're gone. So a variety of greens, because just like different colored fruits and vegetables, they're going to have different nutrients for our body. So, switching them out, they have different flavors, they have different nutritional properties, and they're all good for us. So finding the ones that you love and incorporating them into your diet daily is the best thing that you can do for yourself.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't heard of some of those. I'm going to have to do a little more research and find some that sound interesting, and then see if I do have a CSA around here that grows
Mm-hmm.
them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because I find that the grocery stores on the microgreens, there's not a huge variety. It's like one, two, or there's maybe 3 sometimes, but not a
And you're not
lot.
quite they are either. I mean, when you buy them from a CSA or the greens I get, they are picked that day and delivered to your house, and they're grown with the
Love.
utmost care. Yep, they're grown with love, and they're picked with love, and they're delivered with love, and our bodies appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. One of the things I love to talk about when educating people on like home cooking is really the transfer of like when you're cooking your meal and your energy you're giving off, right? If you're happy, if you have like nice music on, if you're enjoying the cutting process, if you're not doing it because you're angry because you're having to chop stuff and make something, and all of that. There is a difference in, how what goes into your food, and then what you ingest in that food. You're eating that. You're eating the happiness, the sadness, the stress. So again, how your meat is grown is also super important.
Yep.
How your meat is processed and where you get it from. And, just
Mm-hmm.
because it's the cheapest doesn't mean it's always the best. It doesn't mean you always have to go, super high, but you just have to know where it's coming from, and the policies and procedures of those places that grow the animals, or I don't know if they grow the animals, but they house the animals. So I
Yeah,
think that,
yeah. And I always go back to not everybody can afford all of these things. So working within their budget, but just knowing that trying to include more fruits and vegetables wherever you can get them in is a good way to start. And don't be afraid of frozen vegetables, because they're flash frozen and they're just as nutritious, if not more, than the ones that sit on the shelf in the grocery store. So, if you're not able to join a CSA, if you can't have a garden, if you can't do some of those things, you still need go to the grocery store, buy what you can and eat what you can. Try to go to the farmers markets and buy their produce at a cheaper cost, but do what you can to try to include more fruits and vegetables and whole foods, and just switching out some of those processed foods for an apple or an orange or a banana, and do what you can, to make yourself healthier through whatever available to you.
yeah. And if you are on a budget, one of the things I always encourage people to do is, when you are picking up something um, that doesn't have as healthy of the benefits, think twice. What could you put in place of that? If it's a bag of, I don't know, cookies for $6, let's say, if you took that bag and you went to the produce section, what could you actually get in the produce section for $6 that might last you even longer than that bag of cookies, or, so I try to educate people to look at it in that respect, because, when I see people grocery shopping and they're loading up on soda and chips and cookies, and then they have little fruits and vegetables, and then they say, I can't really afford to pay that. It's like, but if you realign what you're buying and you revamp like why you're buying what, you can kind of switch out things. And so we do a lot of switching. So instead of this, we're going to do this week, or instead of that, we'll try this. And I love your approach for little steps, because it can be very overwhelming when you're first starting out. So pick one area, and I would say definitely fruits and vegetables, and just think about how can you incorporate. First of all, get curious and see what you actually ingest on a daily basis and a weekly basis. Maybe do a food log or something like that, and just see where you're at, because that's really where your jumping off point is going to be. And let's say, maybe you only eat vegetables with your dinner and you don't incorporate them into your breakfast or lunch. And so that's where you start and make a commitment to just adding a little bit more vegetables, maybe to your lunch, and then maybe adding a little bit of fruit, into your breakfast. And so that's as simple as it needs to be to start creating change.
Absolutely. Switch out some raw carrots or an apple instead of that unhealthy sugar laden granola bar. Also remember that there's a lot of healthy foods in the aisle that we miss because they might seem too overwhelming, like bags of beans that can make a really healthy dish, or bags of brown rice. So that are on a budget, buying those bags of things, you can make a lot of meals out of that are going to be very healthy with lots of B vitamins and fiber. So fruits and vegetables are important, but looking at some of those other staples in the aisle that really can benefit your family and can go a long way.
Yeah. I think the last thing I want to talk about is like food combining, because I think it's important. We're talking about fruits and vegetables, we're talking about protein, we're talking about carbs. And so, there is in like my mindset and my way of thinking and what I've been trained in, how I kind of do things most times. Again, I'm not perfect. Maybe I do it like a 90-10 or an 80-20, but when I'm having, something that might be sugary, like a banana, that has good fiber, I will always mix that with some type of protein. So it might be a nut butter. It might be something so from the internal standpoint, when you are mixing things like that, can you explain what's happening in your body? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what you really want to look at is that, first of all, we're trying to meet our nutritional quota for the day. So it's important to try to look at what you're eating at any given time. So normally, if you're going to have a snack, I usually recommend to have at least 2 food groups at a time. For instance, like you said, an apple with some peanut butter, some whole grain crackers with some string cheese. First of all, that's going to keep us satisfied for longer. You've got the protein and the fiber. And so you're going to avoid that spike in your blood sugar and drop again, where all of a sudden you're hangry again and you need something, a quick fix. So if you're combining proteins and fiber foods, you're going to feel better for longer. When you're looking at your meals, we're trying to get a variety of foods in throughout the day. So try to get at least 3 food groups in with breakfast. Let's get a Greek yogurt, some berries, and maybe a whole grain piece of bread. When you combine and you get a variety of foods that contain fiber, protein, antioxidants, it's going to make you feel well satisfied, and you're less likely to crave or go on those binges and have a dive and look for sugar, from donuts in the break room to candy on someone else's table. So when you're nourished by the foods that you eat, you're less likely to want to binge on things. So all the diets that we have out there leave us hungry, cranky, malnourished. So when you truly, get in some healthy fats, eat some high fiber foods, eat some lean proteins, and do that on a regular basis, people feel that if they give themselves permission to eat like that, they're going to overeat. But it really is going to satisfy you and make you feel like you have the energy to do what you need to do. All of those foods are going to feed our brain and our muscles. And when we do it the right way, it's going to ward off, chronic disease, and it's going to give us, again, the energy and the mindset to do the things that we want to do and be a better person.
Yeah, show up better for yourself and for your loved ones for sure, when you're
Absolutely.
feeling your best. So,
Mhm.
well, thank you so much. Before we go, I always ask all of the people that I interview for a couple of non-negotiables. So it doesn't have to be food related. It could be really anything in your daily life that you implement so that you feel the best and are the best version of yourself for that day or the week or whatever. So what are some things that you can't do without?
Um, I start out by really trying to focus on um, what's important to meet my needs these days. Whole foods. What am I gonna? Let's think about what I'm gonna eat tomorrow and how I can make that happen. So really looking at the days ahead and planning out what's really going to sustain me for the week, so I'm not left with making a frozen pizza. Next thing I really think about is self-care. What am I going to do every day to take care of myself? Because I'm the only one that can do it. If I don't care for myself, how can I care for anybody else? Is it meditation? Is it reading? Is it a walk? Is it some quiet time? Whatever it is that you need, don't feel selfish about it, because you need to take care of yourself. And again, if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else is going to do that. The third thing that I think is really important is to be kind to yourself, be kind to nature, be kind to people you don't know. You don't know what's going on in other people's lives, and being kind to them, or a kind gesture, um, it may make the difference in between life or death. Nobody knows what's going on in other people's lives, but the one thing we can do is be kind to other people, be kind to nature, be kind to ourselves. And if you just do that, that's one step towards being a healthier, happier person.
Those are amazing. Those are all great tips. They're great tools. And it's truth, really. I mean, you are responsible for you, and
Mhm.
you are responsible for how you treat other people. And in anything in life, people who also know me know that kindness wins every time. Being kind to someone in line, even when they're rude, because sometimes, again, like you said, we don't know what they're fighting or going through that day. And maybe they're being rude and that's not really them. Maybe they're just going through something hard. And so, although that can be a trigger for a lot of people when people aren't kind, the best thing you can do is just show kindness. So, thank you so much for coming on today. It was so lovely to talk to you, and I learned so much from you. And I think, again, when you walk away and you start doing your actual coaching from what you've had in your experience, you're really going to impact the world in a great way, more so than you've already done. Because I do think, even though maybe you don't see it every day, because you educate and maybe they leave, and they go off on their way, you are impacting people daily. So I feel like you're living your good purpose. So that's awesome. Have a good day, and thank you guys for tuning in. I hope that you got something out of this episode. I will drop all of Tonia's information in the show notes, along with maybe one or two handouts that she might have, that might go along with something that we talked about in today's episode. So until next time, have a great day. We'll see you soon. Bye. I loved being here with you today. I hope that you got something from today's mini episode. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. Drop a comment below, and if you feel led to, download this episode and share it with someone that you love that needs to hear this message. To stay connected, check out my Instagram and Facebook pages at Live Life Balanced with Robin. Join my newsletter, my blog, or even opt in for my free junk food cleanse sheet at my website, which is www.livelifebalancedwithrobin. And if you're looking to work one-on-one with someone on your health journey, check out my services page on my website too. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your day. It truly means a lot that you are allowing me to be on your wellness journey with you. Until next time, find peace, love, and light by breathing, being present, and allowing for all possibilities to happen.